Well, let's see. The date is October 24th, 2018. Uh, and let's see, it is 6 o'clock or just really close to it, 5:59 on a wet, rainy Wednesday evening in Frisco, Texas. Let's see, tonight I want to talk about a couple of different things, and I'm going to give you some, instead of giving you a general finished product, I'm going to give you some pieces. Let you figure out how they go together. Okay. So first thing I want to talk about is triggers. I think I said I wanted some triggers on 3 triggers. We're going to write 9 triggers, a total of 9 triggers, but 6 of them are just a piece of cake, because 6 of them are something like this. You can't delete from the players table. I'm not going to let anybody delete from the players table. If somebody tries to delete from the players table, it logs it and it throws a big bad error. Nobody is even supposed to be able to see the players table, let alone delete from it. So that's just, we're going to trigger that guy. Now, this is going to cause trouble when you try to initialize your game, because you probably have a script set up that just calls a whole bunch of the procedures, deletes all, first of all, it probably deletes all your players, and then it does about 40 or 50 inserts. For example, let's see, I have one here. Well, somewhere. Let me open. Okay, here, we're initializing the players, and look at what I do is I just delete everybody from the players table. Well, that's going to throw an error. Why? Because I'm not allowed to delete. Nobody's allowed to delete. And then I just insert player, killer, smasher, dasher, dasher, dancer, prancer, vixen, comet, and cupid, and all of that. Okay, so, but I have to delete first. Now, if you have to delete, that's okay. There's always a toggle on the triggers that lets you, the database owner, and only you, the database owner, go in and turn them off. So if you need to delete from the table, you can delete. Now, the public should not be able to see it. The public does not have the privilege of deleting, right? Only, but if somebody has escalated, this blocks them. But it'll block us too. So if we need to get in there, let me find it here. Somewhere. Okay. Oh, I know where it is. RPS project part 2. For part 2, we will add the triggers that write to the errata table. There will be 3 triggers, 1 for each that execute instead of insert. I also want you to trigger insert and update. Those are easy, piece of cake. So it's just, instead of delete, we just throw an error. And this will block anybody from writing to the table, from updating the table, or deleting from the table. It also blocks you. So since you are blocked, I don't know why I'm saying, I need to, let me see, I need to edit this. Edit. So disable trigger all on RPS players, and then you can do anything you want to in there. You can insert, you can update, you can delete. So the triggers are all deleted, are all disabled. Right. So if you're going to be initializing something, you want to disable all the triggers and then do what you got to do to set up your initial game, put some people in there. So you'll probably want 40 or 50 players in there. So you'll probably write a big script that is just throwing players in there one after the other. Yeah, they could go in the init. Any place that you executed as the DVO, it'll disable them. So if you execute that in the init, triggers are disabled. Don't forget to re-enable them after you finish, unless you're just testing something about it, okay? So then after this, you can delete, you can update, you can do whatever, and then you can enable trigger all on RPS players. Now, they'll also work for individual triggers, disable triggers, and I can give it a specific trigger name and the specific table that it's on. So I can say disable all of them in all triggers on RPS players, or I can just disable them one at a time. I believe that's RPSDB actually. On the database. Say again? For the whole database, right. Cut off all the triggers, and then you can turn them all back on again. So if you say disable them all, everything's open. If you say enable them, they're back on. So the enable doesn't demand that the trigger not be enabled. It just enables everything that's disabled. Anyway, I put this on there. This isn't a big deal. Somebody was asking me about, better save that. Somebody was asking me about the writing to the errata table. Donna, was that you? Somebody had some questions, or they put some questions on the insert. Hang on, I didn't mean to do that. Well, I really didn't mean to do that. Okay. I am recording. I guess I turned off the share. Okay, let me go over that real quickly. Okay, now writing from a trigger or writing any kind of error condition is tricky to do, because if you throw an error, it rolls everything back. If you throw a database error, nothing happens in that whole transaction. Okay. So you're in a trigger and everything's going along fine and you're ready to insert, and all of a sudden I find an error. The trigger finds an error. I want to write to the errata table and then throw the error and roll back. But if I throw the error, my write to the errata table does not happen. Okay. Now what I need here is a linked server. And I wrote something about it here. Linked servers, a little page on them. Okay, and so I show how I define the errata table. I think it should probably have a big varchar field where you can just write a message in there. I think would be a good idea. And then I have a procedure that writes to the errata table. Okay, I mean, pretty simple thing. It doesn't check anything. It just grabs a new a date. Yeah, it grabs the sequence and the date right there. The rest of it just gets put in there. Now, here's the trigger. if I call it like this, RPS write errata, and then throw the error, it will be nothing will get written to the errata table because I threw the error. And so the trigger, it doesn't matter if I do commit or whatever there. It's just this is the problem. When the trigger throws an error, everything is rolled back. The solution, if you're in Oracle, it's called an autonomous transaction. In SQL Server, it amounts to the same thing. It's called a linked server. What it is, it's a virtual server, or it's a transaction that happens beside our server. So it goes someplace else. We send it over to another server. That server takes care of the writing of it. So it writes whether we throw an error or not. After we send it over, we can say that we can throw an error. And all we have to do is the following code. We execute this one time on our server. If you just highlight it and copy it, this creates the server. The server's name is loopback. This is called the loopback server because it's two servers. It's a second server on the same server. So we have two virtual servers on our. Okay, right. I'm going over it again quickly. Some people were asking me questions. So once we go with it, are we okay with this? It used to look like this, but its new form is like this. This is the command and questions. Okay. I guess you guys think I've talked about that enough then, huh? Delete and update is the same thing. It just changes instead of saying before delete, it says before update. You just throw an error. Not allowed to delete. You're not allowed to right. Those are very easy to do. Nothing to it. Views. Okay, I found it to be nice to have a view. I don't want to give them access to the tables, but I do have to give the people access to the players. So I'm going to give the person, I'm going to give the public the right to select the PID from players. They can't update it. All they have is select on this. It's a view. I can change the name if I want to. I just didn't choose to. I could if I want. The player's real name is not in there. The player's password is not in there.
So if you were using a sequence for the player ID, would something like the email be?
You could use whatever you want. You could, I mean, there's nothing stopping. If it's unique, just use it.
Because it seems like player ID wouldn't be that useful. It's just be a bunch of integers.
Okay.
And then, like the name, that's not unique. So allowing people to have the same
right.
name, so.
But they can't have the same email. Email makes a pretty good primary key. If you share an email with somebody, though, you are the same person. But hey. It is handy to have this view, and you're going to see why here in just a minute. Now, we talked briefly about the fact that a function usually returns a number or a varchar or what we call a scalar value. A scalar is something that you can compare, greater than, less than. So it's like 2 or 3 or hello world. It can return a varchar just as easily. A function can return a table. A function can return a table. Now I'm going to go over this. I'm going to give you this piece of it. And so watch what's happening here. This isn't really difficult SQL code. Just understand what's happening here and you'll be able to recreate it. Okay. No, that's get games. Okay, my function is called possible opponents. Possible opponents. And it takes a parameter, and the parameter is a PID. So remember what my constraints are if I'm choosing an opponent, what are my constraints? It can't be me, and it can't be anyone with whom I am in a game already. So what I need now is a little piece of SQL that gives me that list. Anybody think of what's it going to look like? Well, there it is. Something like that. Okay. Well, look at the SQL there. Select PID from the players, where it's not me. The PID is not the parameter. So I'm going to pass this function a parameter, and it's not in the games table paired with me. So it's not in, so select from get where where this guy is the first player. So this is selecting P1 where he's the second player, excuse me, or select P2 where the parameter is the first player, take a union of the two. And if I wanted to test this, I had it. I had one here that I think I closed it, probably didn't save it. Let's see, what has errors here? Execute, so everything's fine here. Now, I have a view that shows me all of the players in the game. And then if I select one of those players, I have a function to which I can feed that player I selected, and it will give me back all of the possible opponents for that player. Now, as when we were doing our first form, and we had three little windows there that we were just putting stuff into these three little windows, and then we were executing and passing them to the subroutine as parameters. So we passed it the player's name, the player's real name, and the player's ID, or whatever you did with it. You have some leeway here. And it checked them, and then it grabbed dated it, put them into the table using the function. Now I'm having to work with existing data. So my only thing that I had to worry about with existing data when I was creating players couldn't already exist. Well, I'm not going to give you a list of everybody, so you're just going to have to try it. I could validate it. I could have a function that validated it, but it would have to hit the database. So I don't see how I'm saving anything by having to call a database function, and it comes back and tells me, yes, you can use that one, or no, you can't. It's still got to go to the database. So I might as well wait until you hit the create game button, and then it gets validated. If it isn't valid, you get an error message back. All right, let's look at this guy. Let's see, this is running. Well, I'll be embarrassed if it doesn't run. Now, what I'm going to use here is combo boxes, and I guess, does it blow up any? Nope. Still doesn't blow up any. Okay, that's good enough. Now, first combo box. When I drop it down, I see all of the players, all of them. Okay. When I select a player, for example, there's Rudolph. Once I select Rudolph, then the box on the other side shows me the players that Rudolph could possibly choose using the function. Okay, now I have to grant select on the function. Grant select on the function, if you're taking notes, to allow the public users to select from that function. I would have thought it would have been execute on the function, but it's grant select on the function because it's table valued. Okay, so Rudolph, I chose Rudolph, and these are the players with whom Rudolph may have a game. That comes from the function. So I'm going to choose, what shall I choose? Smasher, I guess. So Rudolph and Smasher, and I say create game. Game between Rudolph and Smasher was created successfully. Now it's a little rough leaving, Ed. I think I should probably clear these fields, and I'll talk about that. But if I go back and do Rudolph again, notice that I do not see Smasher. The Slasher's down there, but Smasher is not there because we've already got that game. Okay. Now, it's not going through the database to get that, to find out that. It's using that logic in the SQL of the function. It says, if you have this player, what possible opponents are there? It executes the SQL. I can. Now it's going to look a lot like the code that you've already seen. Remember what we've got, how we did it. What did we have to do? What had to happen? And then there's a few other little pieces that go into this. But if we go look at this guy right here, remember the first one executes, this executes when the form loads. Okay. Now there's other ways you could do it. You could put a button on there and you could execute this code when you press the button and say, go get my players. And then you could press another button and say, go get my opponents. That would work just fine. Right? I chose to write mine into the onload. So when the form loads, it loads this guy. So, okay, let's go take a look at it. When the form create game load, now you're going to have to be able to do some Googling here with Visual Basic, right? So how do you get the particular form running that you want to run is kind of tricky, and so that's what I want us to do some research on, but I'll give you these parts of it. So the load, look at this. I love recycling code. It's the same thing as the other one, copy and paste. Now, if you Google these things, you'll find it, and you'll have to go through it and pick up, because they'll all write it differently. There's about 1,000 and a million different ways to write this code. Next, we create the connection. Well, didn't we do that in the last one? Exactly that. I don't remember whether we did that or not. I don't remember whether we had SQL as a string. I don't think we did. Anyway, I'm putting it into a string because I'm going to use it later when I set the command text. And what does that say? Select PID from public RPS players. I'm selecting from the view. My public user is allowed to see that. So since the public user can do it, since this guy, public user with password, whatever it is, can execute that, would be able to do this if he were logged into the database. I can't do anything here that user's name is not allowed to do. Okay. So I have to give that user the ability to select from public RPS players. Everything depends on that. Okay. Here's the command. We get a little bit of difference right here. Okay. SQL command type. Remember, the last time we did it, it was a stored procedure. This time it is text. This time it's going to get SQL text passed to it as a string. Now this makes me vulnerable somewhat here to SQL injection. That's where I become vulnerable to it anyway. When I'm taking in stuff as text, if I take it from the web page and people can just type in anything there, they might type in SQL code there. If I don't sanitize it, I'll show you where. We don't take anything from the user here, so we're in good shape. So the command text is just SQL, select everybody from this. Okay, now it gets a little bit different. We have an adapter. Okay. It's on Google too. And if you take these pieces out, okay, the adapter provides the communication between the data set and the SQL database. The data set is what's dropping down. Okay, the database, so the adapter is what communicates. The stuff coming from the database has to get into that combo box. And it's the adapter that causes that to happen. My adapter gets the SQL command. The SQL command is this guy right here. The SQL command uses the connection, and let's see, it's made with the SQL string. So the SQL string select is in there as the command text. So basically the adapter is kind of this onion that we've built around our SQL. Dimension, here's the data set. And so the adapter is this data set is the set of records that are being populated, that are populating this this drop-down combo box. Here we go. Try it. Open. MyAdapter.fill my data set. So we're going to fill that thing up. Close it. The combo box, CMB first player. That's, by the way, that's the name of the combo box I'm in. Okay. So we haven't seen that one yet. So this is when it's loaded. I'm going to populate this combo box, and here I am now populating. So I've gotten my data set, and the combo box first player, that's the name of the combo box, .data source, my data set. I don't know why it's there's an array of tables. I don't know why it's starting with 0. You can do a little bit of research there and let me know. That's something I need to figure out. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what these are. I took these off of Google. First player value member is PID. Display member is player ID. I think this has to do with the labeling of it in the box. You will find as you do these things that they all kind of do exactly the same thing. They'll be different, they'll be radically somewhat different, but they will all do the same thing. You always have to do, you have a SQL command that drives the retrieval of the data. It has to give you the data that you want. If that SQL command isn't serving up the data you want, and that's why I harp on the idea, SQL is not formatted. You don't care. SQL is the engine that runs everything. So underneath this, the engine running is SQL in the database. The rest of this stuff is just formatting it and putting it in a combo box. And now that we've got this one,
So is value member what the value is, and then display member is what's actually displayed?
well, I'm expecting to see a label header on this. I expect in other languages like this, when I have done a combo box, I got a column heading. So it told me what they were. So this is a player ID. This is the player's password. This is the player's address, stuff like that. I'm expecting to see that pop up in here someplace.
So that display member is not actually demonstrated in the format.
I am not sure that it is. I am not sure that those two are doing anything. Let's find out. Let's see if he runs. Didn't get anything.
But I don't think, I think PID is doing something.
Say again. Okay, yeah. Right, let's see if it runs with the data. Okay. That seems to run. I think that that's a label somewhere that it's going to do. That's just a string. Notice it's not a valid identifier. And the thing, when I was looking at it, I expected that to be a label.
See, what I was wondering is whether it would be, maybe this is too tortured, but something like concatenating, having by player IDs or integers, having integer and the player name, player email.
Well, yeah, and I would expect, I think that that's what it's used for at some point. I think I can put that, when I display it, I think I can put that out there as a label. When you drop it down, you see the labels. It doesn't appear to be doing anything with respect to the drop down list. So that's something that we can look at, and you can certainly change some stuff and see what breaks. The other this one?
So this is the one you see the first drop down.
Right. That's your first drop down box. That's everybody.
And it's the select the P underscore ID is the one.
Right. That was, remember, this is a view. And here's the view right there. It's just, he's selecting from players, but I don't want to give him select on players. So I put a view between them, is all. I don't want them to be able to see players at all, but they're allowed to see the view.
That's kind of where I could be.
You can do it right in here too, right? And so you could select it. Yeah, you could concatenate it and give it a name. The next one. Okay, the first player, right? That's CMB, CMB first player. And so this is the name of that control. Now, if his value changes, this is what's going to drive the second one, right? So you could drive it with a button. You know, it could be a button. It could be a mouse click on it, you know. But this is when the first player's selected value changes, It's going to do this. Well, what's it going to do? Stuff you've seen before. It's going to do this. Good connection. And now notice that the dimension S1 as string, and he gets the text that the combo box 1 changed to. So if I select Donner, S1 is going to be Donner. Okay. The next one dimensions this SQL. Right here, I'm vulnerable to SQL injection. Why? I'm taking something off of that form, and it may be possible for somebody to alter those strings in that combo box. I don't know whether they can or not. Some combo boxes will go both ways, some won't. So I don't know whether it will or won't. I need to know that, and I need to block it. In other words, I don't want the user to be able to edit that combo box, because if the user can edit the combo box, then I become vulnerable to SQL injection.
That's a property when you set up the combo box.
I'm sure it is. But what's SQL injection? It's where I put SQL in when it's expecting my name. I put in, instead, I just put in close quote, semicolon to end it, and then write my SQL statement right after it, my attack statement. And if that string is not sanitized, it will send it straight to the SQL server. Yeah.
Is this for the is this a combo box for the games that are being played?
This is the form that allows us to create a game quickly without remembering what all the players are or something like that. You know, I don't have to remember what players Donner is already involved with, because they won't ever be shown to me in the second. Once I select a player in combo box 1, that player's only valid opponents will show in combo box 2. Okay. So because what's driving it, the thing that's driving it is this DBO possible opponents, and this is the syntax for how you select from a table valued function. It's a little bit like a view. No, possible opponents. Remember, what was that? That's important. It is a function that returns a table. Okay, this was something that was just recently meaning since 2012, I think, maybe 2008, I don't remember exactly. But in recent history, in the last decade anyway, this has gotten into SQL Server. Didn't used to be there. It was strictly an Oracle thing. And then SQL Server came along, and Oracle was mad because they were stealing their stuff. But they wrote their own way to implement it. Okay. So, okay, first thing I did was go grab the text out of there, because I don't like getting a whole lot of things stacked up there. So I usually will give them names. So I gave this string S1 instead of combo box first player dot text. I just wanted to shorten it to S1. So I put it in a variable. Then I took that variable, put it together with some SQL, and put it into another variable called SQL.
And the reason we have, you've got an open parent and then single quote,
Mm-hmm.
that's because S1 is a string. Yes.
Yes, so he has to be in a single quote. So everything has to match. So when I take whatever S1 is, he isn't going to have quotes on him. He's going to be like DONNER. So he has to go inside of quotes. And it's real common to goof that up. I didn't have any trouble goofing it up. Let's put it that way. Well, I've written this stuff before. Okay, now what? SQL command, connection, command type is text, SQL. What do we do? Same stuff, data set, same stuff. My adapter fill. I'm going to guess that this one is similarly junk. And let's find out. Okay, let's see. We got Rudolph. What can Rudolph? Rudolph could have a game with Cupid. Let's do that. And then Dancer. Notice that Rudolph and Cupid should not be allowed. Rudolph. I thought I created a game with Cupid.
I don't think it ran. I don't think it executed.
Game between Rudolph and Cupid was created successfully. All right, so now if I click that again, I'd like to see you figure out how to get that out of there. I haven't put a whole lot of effort into it.
So if you go over there and you look for Cupid, you shouldn't see Rudolph on the other side, should you?
Then I would suggest not. No, I should not see Rudolph. If I go back to Rudolph, I will not see Cupid because then it's been reloaded again. Right, right. I need to refresh it and something. I like to refresh it using that same code. So what I would like to do is call that code on another event. So I got another event and I'm going to say, oh, by the way, I want you to call that code that's named when value changed. There should be a way to do that. I expect that to be there. So, you know, a button click, well, what if I'm doing something else? What if I click this button and I want to assert the button click method of this object? You get my drift? That would be handy. Am I making any sense at all? Okay, well, good. I didn't think I was. Let's see, Rudolph again, and notice how we're shrinking. Vixen, create game. And if I leave Rudolph and go back to him, then I don't see this. So my field is shrinking. I don't know what's going to happen when I get a null set in there. I might run out. I might have a table index error. I don't know what's going to happen. I guess I could find out. Let's see. I got 4 of them to go. Okay, there's Dasher. Create game. Donner. Create game. Prancer. Create game. And Slasher's the only one left, so we create the game. Now what's going to happen? Now I don't know what's going to happen when I try to create the game. When I say create the game, insert failed on duplicate game. So it went to the database and bounced back with an error. You know, I don't know how to fix that. I haven't put any effort into trying to fix that yet. Questions? Anyway, this is kind of the format of it. Notice that both of those are pretty much the same. They trigger different events. They do the same thing. About the only difference between the two is the SQL that's executed. Where's that SQL live? It lives over in the, well, the SQL calls the stuff, but the SQL that actually gives me the opponents is over in the functions of the database. So the database is doing the work, serving it up, and the form is just giving me the stuff. Questions?
So in order to build in this form, you need a new form, you need a view for the first drop down.
You need a view for the first drop down, and you could conceivably do a view for the second, but the thing of it is that a function that returns a table, what it does for us is it lets us write an SQL statement that takes parameters. SQL itself doesn't take parameters. You have to hard code them in there. So if I were trying to write that code into the code from this code, if I were trying to write this code, and I could, I'd have to write it out as a string. It would be brutal. First, I would have to set a variable, or what? Every place I got this at P, that would have to be the CMB first player dot text. So I would have it here, and here, and here. So in 3 places I'd have to code that in. Now what having the table valued function does, it allows me to write this piece of code, this code right here, and pass it a parameter. That's really all it does for me. Then I get a table back. I can't update that table because it's coming from a function. It's like a view, but it's a view that's based on a parameter. So I could pass it a parameter. I could also pass it the password. Questions? Okay, the reason I like that setup, because the first form we did was, well, basically we just had to give it 3 values and it put them into the table. Second form we did was based on the 3 values that we had. Okay, the third form that we're going to do, we're going to have 3 forms, and I'm going to let you figure out how to do this one. But guess what? Those connections are going to be just about the same. You're going to have to do the same thing. Now, what is the input to creating a game? Creating a round. Okay. What else? The what? 2 players. But the problem is that the input to the create round is game ID. Now, I don't remember, I don't know how you wrote it, whether to take the game ID or you wrote it to take 2 players, and then from that you got the game ID. Okay, all right, that's fine. So when it updates, the game ID is going to have to get in there somehow. Then it will get a rock, paper, scissors for player 1, rock, paper, scissors for player 2. Okay. The form plays the game. The form plays the game. Okay. The form would be able to display a score. So here's where the rubber kind of meets the road. how fancy you want to get. The game could get the score. If you had a view or a function that gave you back the counts, you would be able to display the current scores. You'd have to hit the database for it. So you'd hit the database, the counts. How many times has player 1 been the winner? How many times has player 2 been the winner? Who is the winner? Did I tell you you had to do that? No. Right? That comes from the database. It is not stored any place in the database. In order to get that, you just have to count. But databases are really good at that. So you need some functions maybe, depending on what you want to do. Okay. How would you select a play? What do you see here in terms of controls? A drop down, but you always have 3. I like radio buttons. Radio buttons are exclusive. Click, click, click. As I did the radio buttons, I would put 4 radio buttons in there, right? Rock, paper, scissors, and machine gun, right? Now the machine gun is an invalid play. That lets you test it, right? So you want to be able to give it an invalid play.
That's just for testing.
Yeah. I guess a machine gun would always win, huh? No, I don't have to be machine gun. You can say invalid game, invalid play, just so that you can test it with one. And are you detecting it, and where do you detect it, and that sort of stuff. It would be nice. Typically in a radio button, I haven't looked at this one. Typically a radio button, you get a group, okay? So a radio button group, you can't see it, but it's there. It has a name, and you put this radio button group in it's an object that's in your form. To that, you add radio buttons, 3 or 4. I think probably 4. Be able to give it an invalid one, and then they're labeled rock and paper, scissors, and invalid. Okay. So then you select it, and the radio button can change. The value of the radio button the value of that group is the button that is selected. So an individual radio button cannot stand alone. It has to be part of a radio button group. Have you guys done this before? Google is your friend. They are not that hard to do. I think the drop-down boxes are the hardest. I don't really need a, let's see, probably I would have a button that says, okay, I'm done, go. Where it gets really fun is when you just try to break it out into two forms on different computers. I don't know how to do that on SQL Server. I know you can in Oracle, and it's really gets interesting. But you just have to do a lot of, I don't believe I've ever gotten, I've never had a student get theirs working like that. I've gotten mine working a couple of times, but okay, questions?
Let's recap. So what is the third form look like? So we have
It looks like what you're going to make it look like.
So is the game ID to be the drop-down menu? So whatever available game ID.
I don't think I'm going to tell you exactly what has to be that. Are you going to show the game ID? I don't know that you even have to show the game ID. Right? You could put the third form the third form could have 2 combo boxes, but instead of showing possible opponents, the drop down would be a whole lot, the second one would be a lot easier, because when I select one player, it would show me all of the players with whom I had a game. That would be easier, actually. I can get all of that from the games table.
I visualize like how this would actually, I don't want to say be used, but you know, you think about the way rock, paper, scissors is played. It's played by 2 players
Right.
simultaneously, right?
Mhm.
So we've got
Okay.
different controls
Right.
on here.
Right. And ideally, we would break it into 2 different forms. And the forms would communicate. Right at first, we'll have it both on the same form. Click, click. Right. And then if we get really macho about it, we'll try to split them out. Macha. Mucha macha. I was walking into the, no, never mind. Let's take a break.
Election, election.
We have a visualize what the third form is. I still didn't get an answer. Did you get an answer?
So I'll go back to that. I'm going to recommend a radio button group, 2 radio button groups for the various plays. I think would be the simplest way to do it. And with that in mind, I'm going to try here. Let's see, I'm going to go to my view. I'll drop down my toolbox. Have to be what? Okay. Now, what I'm looking for, I want to create another form like this one. How do I create a form? Project. Well, I'm trying to find a form. How do I do a new form? I mean, I got 2 of them here that I've managed to do, and it might be new. It's a file, but they're not files by themselves.
Seems like it'd be a control.
I'm expecting here, add. Nope.
Oh, you're still debugging.
So if you went back where it said add new item, I wonder if there'd be a file, a form option there.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to come up with a there. Pin him in. Mm-hmm. So what do I have up here? Do I have data set, FI, font dialog? I don't have a form.
Maybe right click on the project name.
Here,
Add.
add.
Maybe it's a new item. There we go.
Windows form.
This was our all-
All right. Which one do I choose? A VB? Well, let's see. Let me see. Do I have? Can I copy and paste? Did I have a duplicate? Duplicate.
Could you do that like from Windows Explorer, just to copy the file?
Well, the thing of it is that they're not in files per se. I don't think. They're over here in this PCC drive, users. Well, looks like there's some of them there. It does. It looks like there's more to it than that. I don't think I'm going to be able just to simply copy that. Well, so I've got two of them in here. So I've got create game and insert player in the same project. How do I get the play round? Try a new item. Well, that's the same one I had a minute ago.
It says under the project menu, you should have an add Windows option.
It was there. We saw it towards the bottom.
Where?
No, under add. Add, and then Windows Form.
And then go back to
Right there. Oh, that's where we were.
right.
Mm-hmm.
This is mentioning the project menu at the top of the screen.
Oh, add Windows Form.
It's going to take us the same place we were.
Same place.
What's under the web icon on the web?
Same sort of thing.
Web form.
Let's see. So this is a solution. So when in doubt, Google. So VB add form to
Project.
I'll try project in a minute. I might right click the project. You want to add an click existing item. Well,
Like add.
how do you add, well, yeah, I know, but I've never been able to successfully add a new form. You just add the CS file and the dependencies come in. Well, I tried this.
I think that's a form file that already exists.
Right, right. Uh-huh. Well, okay. Right click the project, add existing item. Well, that seems pretty simple. the project. Add existing item. Oh,
Maybe it's not adding, it's creating.
yeah. Now those are the ones that I have.
I make a copy. So you
We could, yeah, if I can make a copy.
Yeah, I make a copy. So you go to the VP, you want to copy this, you run mouse click, copy, and go back here, run mouse click, paste.
What now?
So,
Copy this.
Okay, and copy,
Copy.
and move to the upper level, paste.
Here.
Yeah, run mouse click.
Paste. There's my copy. Okay. So I'll name it F play around. Danger, danger. To prevent before loading the button, insert player. Okay. Okay. Now let's see what I've got here in the code. I think that this code is still all named the same. Let's see. Okay, so I've disabled it all. Well, looks like I've got a basic hello world there. Now I should be able to go to the designer. Okay. Well, that gives me a working form. Now I would just lasso all those things and delete them. Oops. I'm not sure that I am. Yes, I am, aren't I? Oh, why do I have a different looking icon there for that one? It's a form. Public class form create game. I don't know. I'll have to do a little bit more research on that. I'm going to go ahead and I've got all the grading caught up here. So I'm going to go ahead and break to lab. And then I'll worry about this. I'll get a form in here somehow and I'll write down how I did it and you guys can figure it out. Get a form added. I'm not sure that this is a form. Right click, I have the designer here, and here I have the view code. So I think I got a module here, but I don't think that I take him out. Make sure I'm deleting the right thing. No, I see. Copy. Going up to the solution. No paste there. Try a paste here. Okay, form, create game. Something in the code that, and so I'm going to go to view code. Well, yeah. This one. View code here. Okay, let me get rid of these guys. I don't need them in there. I don't think I don't recall making any changes to that. Form insert player. Now, so here's my class form insert player. Conflict and namespace, my form 1. Ah, yes, okay. So this is the one I want to rename to okay.
So in the namespace, I don't know how you get to the namespace.
Right. I see it. So as soon as I changed that there, so where it was, when it was insert player, it looked like that one, but here it changes. And my namespace is, well, I'm going to end the recording.